This is the UX Institute podcast, and I'm Mark Swain, founder of UXI. In this podcast, I interview UX and product leaders from around the globe.
Harvard Business Review actually just came out with something 2 days ago. AI is not making work more enjoyable or more efficient. It's making it more intense. And I 100% believe that.
Right. Quick reality check. AI is absolutely flying. And somehow, the experience of actually using it still feels like hard work. In this episode, I'm joined by Dan Saffer, designer, educator, and someone who's been properly digging into where AI product design is going and where it's falling apart. We talk about how AI is really being used day to day, not the hype version, the actual version, the gap between people who live in these tools and everyone else who's had a go once and said, nah, not for me. We get into what's broken, the prompt box, the clunky workflows, the sheer amount of effort being pushed back onto users, and why the industry seems far more interested in building smarter models than better products. And if you're building anything in this space, this is the bit that matters, because the real opportunity right now isn't another model, it's fixing the experience. There's a lot in this one, from AI fatigue to where design roles are heading next. Let's get into it. Dan, thank you for being here on the pod with me. I've been so enthralled with some of your LinkedIn writing and posts around AI, UI, direction, ideation, where it's going. And I feel it's such a ripe conversation to have now.
Thanks for having me. It's a really fascinating space to be in.
So I thought maybe by starting off, we could talk a little bit about your daily workflow in terms of what AI looks like for you.
Sure. I mean, I use it for all different kinds of things. I mean, for me, it's a real research tool. It's a creative partner when I'm doing things like trying to come up with interesting activities for students, or, hey, I'm really trying to convey this concept. What are some ways I might do that? Or for me, it's like research, like what's the latest in this area? Explain this thing to me. I use it all the time for that, use it for summaries. When I have calls like this, I get a summary of it through Notion, and sometimes for writing help, I use it to help me prompt or edit. It has really become part of my daily routine in ways small and large. Can't imagine going back to not having it. And I'm at the point where I've actually started making little tools for myself. That's been my most recent thing. I think I counted 8 different daily AI newsletters every day,
Okay.
which is a lot to read through every day.
Yeah.
And so I made this little tool that turns those newsletters into a daily podcast for me to listen to.
Oh, nice. Interesting.
It has really changed my working pattern, my thinking pattern, my creativity, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's where it becomes actually really useful in terms of summarizing or playing back good information, because there's just so much information around the AI product space hitting us daily.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because Herb Simon, who was the Nobel laureate and CMU professor who was one of the godfathers of AI, that's what he thought AI was going to be good for, was this kind of filter of all this information so that you only get what is really important. Of course, I don't think he realized how much AI would also be helping to generate all that new kind of content that comes at you as well.
Totally. Do you enjoy the tools? Do you enjoy the UI of AI? Do you think people generally are enjoying it, or are they just coping?
We've done a bunch of user research on this, and there's really a pretty big divide between people that are using it daily or hourly and for professional use versus people that pick it up occasionally. I think there's a huge gap there. The people who are using it a lot, they do have problems with it for sure. It's very specific kinds of problems, like finding an old thread that I was talking to AI about. Those kinds of things like, hey, I want you to forget this memory of me, or, hey, I'm doing a lot of multitasking, working between 2 different tasks, both of which are using AI. How do I flip between them? So there's kind of these like power users that for us were about 25% of the people that we talked to. And then there was like 75% of the people who have maybe used it a few times, use it once or use it once in a while. For them, it is often kind of mystifying. It's a hard thing. There's no affordances. They don't know what it can do. They don't know the limitations of it. They don't know how to write good prompts. So there's all kinds of problems that they have. And a lot of them have just been like, I'm out. It doesn't work for me. I don't understand it. I don't know what I'm supposed to use it for. Can't I just search for these things anyway? Because some of them just think of it as like a really good search box that they use. And that's on us. That's a design problem where it looks like Google. It looks like search boxes that we've trained people to use for the last 20 years to find the stuff that they want. And so they treat it like a search box when it really is not. It can do all these other things. And so how do you start to expose all the things that AI could be doing for them that isn't just like, here, you figure it out. You figure out the magic phrase that's going to generate the thing that you want. And for a lot of people, that's a big barrier. This the same way that using command line was a huge barrier for people until you started to get the graphical user interface 40 years ago. It really changed that, people can actually start to use this. But even the graphical user interface left out a lot of people. And now we have mobile phones and tablets, which include a lot more people because they are simply easier to use. Right now, what I'm trying to do with my classes and with my students and just in my thinking in general is how do we start to build all the things that we need to bring those people into AI?
Interesting.
Not that I'm like hey, everybody's got to use this tool or everyone that needs to be using this technology. I don't think that that's true, but I do think that there are plenty of places where AI is really valuable for doing a certain amount of things. And frankly, we already are using it in things that we don't think of as AI. Every time you call an Uber and it tells you, it's going to be there in 3 minutes, you're using AI. It's telling you like, hey, it's estimating what time it's going to be there and how much it's going to cost and all those little things that we don't even think about as being AI. Type ahead is another one. Because it just works, we don't think about it as that. It's just software.
Absolutely. It's interesting you hit on this kind of, I won't call it a divide, but it's a clear view I have too and have seen is that either you jump right in and you really start playing with the interfaces and use cases and getting, half decent at prompting, or you kind of stand back and say, hey, I don't know what all this is about. I don't even know contextually how this fits in with my day. I see that with different people in my circles, I know too, because obviously people like you and I are living in it, but then there's this other array where people are barely touching it, barely know how to use it, but it could be anyone from a construction worker to a cab driver could pick it up and build an app, right? But they don't know.
Even basics like, which one of these do I use? They all basically look the same. Like, do I use Claude? Do I use OpenAI? Do I use Gemini? Like, where do you even start?
100%. It's just not clear. One of the most interesting parts that I did want to get into was about that interface, that text box, that search box, maybe if you call it a search box, but it's not. But the perception of it, where it sits even ergonomically in the browser at the bottom, which is painful in terms of stretching your browser around to access it and click and type and all that kind of shit that goes with it. It's kind of like, who designed that? How do people know how to just engage with it? The feedback is so poor. When a prompt is written and executed and it begins its playback, the tread is the most painful visual experience I've had in UI since I don't know when. Trying to capture yourself and historically tread back through certain points in outputs. Oh my God, I could just walk away from my machine. It's so bad. And most tools are the same. So why in the past 2 to 3 years hasn't anyone talked about this to this degree?
I think there is a feeling that the most important thing is the accuracy of the model. They put ChatGPT out there, the version 3, and they were like, here, try this. And and it was this giant explosion. And so everyone's just kind of started mimicking that. Let's just put this thing out, see who uses it. I don't think there was much thought given to how people were going to use it, when they were going to be using it, what they could use it for. It was just like, let's see what people could do with this. Flash forward 3 years, and there's a lot of people using it for a lot of different things, but the energy and attention has not been around the product side of it. It is and the kind of strategy side of it. We're starting to see a little bit of this now, where people are starting to aim things that are at enterprise or coding. We're starting to see some angling there in terms of product differentiation and product market fit. But all the attention has been paid on, let's make the best model, let's make the best model, let's make the best model. And let's do it to these benchmarks, these evals that are, can it answer PhD level physics questions? Can it do advanced math? And it was never about, does it have the best personality? Does it have an engaging way to find the things that you used to talk about? Does it start to spawn other pieces of UI that you can actually start to use direct manipulation with, rather than having to type everything? That's been the general kind of push from tech companies. I think it is starting to change now. Certainly there are still the kind of gold rush towards, hey, let's make the best model. And that's why we see these incredible paydays for data scientists and AI researchers and stuff like that these companies are going after and giving them, $1 million to sign up with them. But I do think that people are starting to recognize that the models are really good now. And even if we stop developing the models right now, I'm convinced that we have years and years and years of product development that could happen, even if the models didn't change at all. Like, I feel like there's a million things that you could be doing with the technology that we have right now. I think some of it is that, who are they hiring and focused on product people and designers and trying to figure out, like, what are the things that would be helpful? And particularly if you're starting to be like Anthropic and be like, hey, we are very focused on enterprise. We're focused on code. Can we make those tools for that audience, for that slice of people, really great? And we are starting to see this with definitely certain people putting different kind of layers on things that are for specific audiences. So one of the tools that I use is called Spiral, which is for writing and being able to better mimic your personal writing style. But we're also seeing this with like lawyers and doctors and things where they have very little tolerance for error. And so how do you get these things that are focused on particular niches that, are high risk and have a lot of things like compliance and constraints and legal around them?
Yeah.
To start to use these things, and that are really focused on specific tasks and specific kinds of customers. I think we're really starting to see some of that happening.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of Anthropic, you can see the marketplaces building around integrations, MCP to Figma, multiple workflows there, entertaining different cohorts in new ways. A lot of what you don't see out of OpenAI as much. At least it's not communicated as much anyway from workflow perspective.
OpenAI's strategy seems to be, we're going to do everything all at once.
Yeah.
We're going to go after, it was everything. They just launched last week, Frontier, which is which is for enterprises to be able to put different AI agents on one platform. So they're thinking about it because, of course, enterprise is where so much money is. But OpenAI to me is a consumer product. That's their bread and butter.
It's interesting, like just as that example to enterprises, how ready are large orgs to even adopt pilots or sandboxes around first agentic workflows to any degree? It's just spaghetti at the wall, right?
I think it is. There was a thing that IBM Research did last year that was asking CEOs and things like, oh, are you ready for this? Have you really thought through what this could do for you? And the answer was, of course, no. But they're like, well, we'd rather be fast and wrong than slow and right. So it is that, spaghetti on the wall. We're just going to try a whole bunch of things, which is why that you're seeing so much AI failure rates among all these different projects. The failure rate is enormous. Every time that we've looked at research or other universities' research, it's like 80%. It's a huge number of just absolute failure, like double the rate of traditional projects. It's staggering.
And are you finding in those stats that it's because of humans or the lack of skill sets or approach internally within an org to adopt a sandbox and try this out and adopt internally long-term in terms of transformation, that old transformation word? Is it down to the humans internally?
It is down to picking and choosing the wrong projects to work on. That's what the research keeps showing, is that because we think of AI as being this kind of super intelligence that can do all these things, that you push a button and it just does things for you, executives and people at the top keep trying to do these very hard, very risky things, replacing people, completely automating workflows, and all that stuff. It's just not ready to be done. Or because AI is so probabilistic versus deterministic, it is making these unusual mistakes. And so, we're just finding things over and over that because people are picking these really hard problems to do and not including humans in the loop, trying to automate everything, particularly now with agents, people are just trying to automate everything. The technology is just not mature enough for that.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Maybe we could chat a little bit about the UI again and just about, your thoughts on that prompt box, the exhaustion of the UI that is pushed back on the user in terms of typing, right? My hands are sore from typing. I'm prompting. I'm constantly online trying to find prompting frameworks that will slim and get to the outcomes I want better so I can just copy and paste so I just don't have to type anymore. I'll be honest, I absolutely hate it. And so what should the UI be doing? I've seen lots of really interesting stuff online, people proposing different interfaces for the prompt box and different approaches that could be just so much smoother and so much more pleasant to use. What are your thoughts around that? And how important is it for designers, typical product designers and UX researchers to still be involved in this? Because we hear all about the apocalypse of roles and the slimming down of jobs and all that. And when we haven't even solved the UI for it yet, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Let's get rid of the people that would solve a lot of these really challenging problems.
Yeah.
There's a couple things to start with. Yes, we push a lot of cognitive load back onto users to figure out the right prompts, what things can do, what the limitations of the systems are, all those kinds of things. We've kind of said, this is on you. Find the right way to ask this question. We are starting to see some people trying to push back on that and some solutions to that, one of which is skills, which is an interesting thing where you're able to put these new skills into AI harnesses and say, hey, use this skill so that I don't have to figure out what the prompt is to clean up this code or to make this design accessible. We are starting to see some of that happen. But again, you have to know how to do that. And you have to know what the command is to be able to do that. So the thing that we're fighting against is this idea that voice and chat is the ultimate interface. And I keep seeing this trope repeated over and over and over again. I just don't believe it's true. It is not the end all be all for all kinds of tasks. It is really, really good for certain kinds of tasks, particularly when you're doing open-ended or trying to get things started, or you want to have more of a conversation that is about, a creative idea or something personal or those kinds of things. It is really great for. What it is not great for are detailed work or refinement or those kinds of things where you don't really want to be able to say like, oh, move this pixel 3 pixels to the right. Yeah, you don't want to say cut and paste this paragraph from here to here. It makes you want to like jump through a window. And then going back and trying to find something in chat is just not a great, you're scrolling, you're looking for things. It is just not a great way to present information, particularly when you're trying to compare things or show things. So
yeah, right.
My hope and thought is that eventually we will have these kind of 3 different interfaces around AI. There's what I call no interface, which is AI working in the background to do things for me that I don't need to be involved in, or it is just helping me organize my work or prevent me from seeing things like spam that I don't need to see. So that's kind of on one end. In the middle are our kind of traditional GUI tools where as I need more tools for refinement, those tools start to appear and I can say, hey, I want to make this brighter. Oh, and so I can drag a slider to make things brighter or make something less bright or whatever it is I'm doing. Hey, bold this text. That I can do those with the tools that we're used to because it's simply faster and more efficient to do them. And then at the other end of the scale is the kind of more open-ended, hey, I'm thinking about making a document on this, or hey, can you take these 10 emails and summarize them and do this thing for me? Things that I can just quickly explain. There's no easy direct manipulation to be able to do that. And so I think looking forward, I really hope that we start to see people thinking about all these different modes of interface, whether it's no interface, graphical interface, or voice or chat interface. When is the best time to use them and how to start doing them for this task? What makes the most sense to do? I think that's where I really want to start to see that interplay between graphical and chat and text interfaces where you can start with typing. It presents you some options that you can then start to refine or say, no, actually, that wasn't what I wanted. Can you try it with more emotion or more emphasis? And then go do that. And then as I keep getting more and more refined, I start to be able to use the actual refinement tools that we're used to. That's what I want to drive.
That's super interesting. I find myself trying to use voice more and more for prompting because I'm so sick of the keyboard. So that's come into my workflow a lot. But you are right. In terms of the refinement process for whatever prompt you've begun with, there's so much back and forth, particularly when you're building apps. If I'm in Lovable or Replit, I know these models are going to get better over time, of course, but the repetition at the moment is beyond painful.
Even with the tool that I made myself, after a while, I was just like, forget it. This is good. This is good enough. It looks terrible, but I'm I'm going to deal with it, because it's only me having to deal with it and I can deal with it.
Let's just drop it into Figma and fix it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Until I can say, here's my Figma file, make it exactly like this. And we're getting close to that, but we're still not quite there yet. We're very close. I think in the next 6 months, we will be able to see some of that really happening for sure.
Yeah.
I will say, just to wrap this up with a bow, I do see some companies starting to do this. Figma being one of them. Adobe is another where they are providing both kinds of tools for refinement, which is, little text boxes that you can type and be like, no, actually try this, and physical tools like sliders or dials or like, hey, or save this one, or hey, I'm going to highlight this part of this text, keep this part, but the rest throw away and regenerate. So you are starting to see these little glimpses of it. And you can also see that people are starting to, with MCP and stuff, start to pull pieces of other apps into their app and be like, let me just pull in a table from Notion or something like that to start to do this.
Visit uxinstitute.com to sign up to our new newsletter. UXI will be sharing best-in-class UX research practices as well as in-depth interview content so you can excel at your career in UX. To shift gears a little bit, how are you seeing the landscape play out, even for your students and industry-wise, for people working in design and UX right now with what's happening when there are tooling upgrades happening literally daily, weekly, in terms of the correct workflow, what to stick with? How are we going to keep the pace with this?
I feel so bad for anyone working right now. I mean, it's hard. It's hard for me to keep up with it. It's hard for them to keep, and it's my job to keep up with it. It's literally, that's all my job is to keep up with the news so that I can tell them, hey, here's what's happening. Here's how you do this, without having to do, the actual job of being a designer or being a product manager or any of that, where you're just, oh my God, having to keep up with the tools shifting every week. Last week, we're teaching design systems, and it's like, well, you can't do this with design systems right now. And then this past week, I was like, remember when I told you that last week? That's not true anymore.
Totally.
And it is extremely hard to keep up the pace because things change weekly, monthly, sometimes daily. It is really hard to stay on top of that. How do you keep up on what is the latest and greatest and still be putting out new designs, putting out new work? Especially because now there's this idea of well, you have all these tools, you should be putting out even more work.
Exactly. So why aren't you working more? Yeah.
Exactly. Harvard Business Review actually just came out with something 2 days ago that was all about AI is not making work more enjoyable or more efficient. It's making it more intense. And I 100% believe that. The expectations are ratcheted up. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm supposed to have 4 prototypes by the end of the day. That's really hard.
It is. It's a funny one, with the likes of yourself and I, we spend so much time in this stuff, and to where to kind of pin yourself to and what workflows to stick with and mature and really spend time with. That's the part I'm finding tough at the moment. I had a friend of mine in the industry text me this morning. He said he was trying something new in Cloud Code, whatever. Last night he was up till 3 a.m. And I'm like, dude, go to bed.
I feel your pain. Yeah. I mean, just to do that little thing that I built, took me 2 days. And that was a little thing for me, not for a job. And so, it's hard because the expectations are extremely high. The tools are still changing and are not quite there yet that you could completely replace everything. Then there's the things that you're talking about, which are what do we keep? What is really important to preserve as a design task or as a product task? And what we've been finding is that so much of what is getting discarded is the thinking part of design, is the kind of user experience, that kind of stuff. Letting the AI do the thinking is where things are really breaking down. And so really pushing our students, and hopefully, via that and via things like this, push the industry to go back to what is it that we should be building? How is it built? How does it work for our customers, our context, for this workflow? Really doing a lot of that upfront thing, which I think is where designers, user researchers are just so important. Under that understanding of context, of users, of aesthetics, what really works. And then you're going to have the AI is going to be able to do a lot of that production work, but then you're going to have to reflect on it. You're going to have to think about it and be like, is this right? And I think what we're seeing right now is a lot of people abdicating both that upfront thinking and the reflection part. They're just saying, make me an app that does this. Boop, go. Okay, that's good enough. And I think what we're then seeing is just the kind of a basic AI slop just rendered into product. For some things, that is completely fine. For some areas where you don't need a lot of thought and the and the conventions are set and those kinds of things, it's fine. But when you start thinking about, new features and new product lines and new ways of doing things, it's just not good for that. And then has your brain decayed to the point where you can't think of those things, where you
Yeah.
can't sketch something out, where you can't
Right.
do the basic work. And I think that's
interesting.
that's the fear that I have, is that we will abdicate. And we're starting to see studies about this where, particularly, people doing work where they're not really doing the work. And so they don't understand the work and don't understand the value of it and don't understand the nuances of it. And all that gets lost and handed over to the machine. That's a real problem.
So this is such a valuable point, I guess, for students like yours going out into the industry. It brings up so much thought around the typical process, the design sprint mentality we've been through for a decade or more, 15 years, probably 10 years maybe. Is the double diamond dead? Is there half a diamond left only? And does it matter? There's so much to question, because we go straight to solution with a prompt and we build it out. A couple of hours later, we actually have a working app that's doing most of what we wanted. It may look a little shitty, but we can improve that. Because we're so used to typical paradigms and workflows within these experiences, do we really need to think about it that deeply as we used to? Maybe some layers, not so much. Maybe others, to your point, we still need to go back to the core of the actual workflow or task at hand. And is that the way the user wants to complete it or interact with it?
Yeah. I mean, I think when we start thinking about things like agents, having an agent go and do a workflow before you understand the workflow and before you understand, these are the important decisions in the workflow. Here are some things that a human being often has to weigh and judge. If you hand all that over to an AI without understanding all those things, I think you're going to get a lot of really bad output from that workflow. I don't think the workflow is going to work. But I think these are design tools. These are tools like task analysis that have been around for 30, 40 years. We've had task analysis. That's an important tool. We shouldn't lose that. Now, it may be different. I mean, the process right now is kind of all over the place because, some parts are expanding, some parts are contracting, some parts are completely being left off. And I think that's just the state that we're going to be in for a while. But I think starting to think about what methods are valuable in what situations and can we still apply those even though the AI is so good at the production part of things. How do we get enough information up front so that we can do the good prompting and then that we can evaluate what the AI is outputting so that we know this feels good. This is going to work. This is worth taking out to customers and showing them, or this is worth putting into production and doing some A/B testing on it. I think all those things are up for grabs and we are still fumbling around in this. And I expect we will for a while.
I agree. I think the overall sentiment, and I had a conversation with someone yesterday about this because he's living and breathing this stuff like we are. And he's coming to the conclusion, which is exactly what you've just stated, is that this is all up in the air. I'm stopping trying to control anything here. He said, I just don't know. I don't know what it's going to be like next week or next year. I'm stopping trying to control my workflow and I'm just going to play around for a while and take it easy because out of the cycle that we're in, the norms have not set and they won't for a long time yet.
Right. I think one of the things that people need to start thinking about is, what is my process? What works for me extremely well? And what are the things that are still valuable? And I think everyone is going to start having their own kind of design process. I mean, really people do already. And I just think that AI is supercharging some of it where it's like, well, and highlighting some of the deficiencies that we've had having a design system is amazing. It's an amazing tool, but it has also allowed us to offload a bunch of thinking about things so that we're really focused on UI and not as much UX. And AI is now supercharging that, where it just is like, okay, well, give me your design system. I'll just take this, build the thing for you. Here you go, without really thinking about everything that you as a designer, user researcher, or PM know about customer, your business,
Yeah.
the context, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with your students, what is the sentiment right now? How are they feeling? Are they feeling like they're on a Ferris wheel, trying out stuff weekly? And do they have an idea of where they land when they do go out to work?
I think it's less a Ferris wheel and more a roller coaster, where they're like,
better idea.
Right.
Better analogy. Yeah.
This is amazing. This is amazing. Look at how fast I can do this thing. Oh God, it doesn't really work all that well, and then it's like, oh, but look, here's this new thing. And it's just kind of a never ending, they are feeling, the same as we are. They have the added pressure of people not hiring junior folks to start doing these things. There's a lot of anxiety around that for sure.
Yeah.
And so then they're like, well, what skills do I need in order to get those early jobs? Particularly when we start saying, well, a lot of the production work is going to be done by AI. And that was usually the entry point for junior designers. It was like, hey, well, we have this little tiny feature. We have these bug fixes. You need to work on this Jira ticket and learn our system. And a lot of that's kind of going away. And so they're like, well, how do I start to get my foot in the door when everything is going to be strategic and thinking and refinement? And so I think there's a lot of anxiety there, and we're trying to teach them both how to be, strategic thinkers, because a lot of that production work stuff is going away. But we also want to give them the basic tools to start to be able to use different methods as they need them, to be able to evaluate, is this a good design or not? Is this aesthetically pleasing? Is it a good flow? Does it fit the task at hand? Does it fit the user's context? So it is a really tough time for them. And, not to be self-serving, but it's definitely hard to know what to teach when things are so in flux. So we try to, at least the tactic that I'm taking is I try to teach a lot of fundamentals. Think about things like reframing and knowing the user, knowing the business, those kinds of basics, and the most cutting edge stuff. Here's how you start to augment yourself as a designer. The stuff in between, you're going to have to figure out.
Yeah, very good. It's tough. It's different. It's a whirlwind at the moment. It'll be interesting to see, we're all going to be living and breathing it over the next few years to see what norms land and where things may settle down into as consistent workflows weekly.
One of the things that I try to do, which is, I definitely see the industry moving towards these kind of hybrid roles, which are product manager, designer, engineer, light engineer, where you've got that kind of blend of things happening. And some places, I'm starting to see things that are called product builders and stuff like that. That are actually starting to hire for those kinds of roles. They're doing, I wouldn't say small features, but they're doing things that are fix this bug, or hey, this small part of the app, we don't have any engineering resources. Can you work on that? Or, hey, you're going to make the first prototype on this, and then our engineers will take it from there. That kind of role, I think we're starting to see a lot of.
Yeah, I'm seeing it as well in terms of quick prototypers, designers who can partially code with the system to some degree, hand over some production-ready entry-level code around the framework or foundation of the product. I'm definitely seeing that in different bits. And there's lots of interesting talks going on at the moment out of YC in some of their pods around this as well, about designers becoming engineers. That gap is closing more and more and more and more.
I mean, the big gap used to be having to know a lot of code and get more and more technical than most designers were ever trained to be or really even wanted to be. But now a lot more are kind of getting their hands dirty, playing with these tools and getting more comfortable with things that they didn't ever have to really deal with. I mean, good Lord, I have a GitHub now,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Oh,
so
God.
it's like everyone's got to roll up the shirt sleeves and just get stuck in and learn it.
Right. But again, this brings us back to how do you keep up with this? How do you keep managing that and keep up leveling your skills at a time when you have actual work to do? It's very hard.
Yeah, it is. That's why, I see people in my community around me who are building stuff at night, trying to keep up with stuff, working over weekends, just trying out new models. It's just all over the place. A lot of people are just trying to keep.
I've definitely seen some articles about AI fatigue that are happening, both from a job standpoint, from a company standpoint. We are so sick of trying to shove AI into everything.
Exactly. A couple of last questions. If we think about the next 3 to 5 years, how are you feeling about the next 5 years? And for designers, researchers, product managers, with all of the hyperbolic content that we're seeing every day about the changing of roles, about the loss of jobs, all of that mixed, are designers going to end up product managers within the next 5 years, handling everything end to end in terms of requirements, tickets, prototypes and hours, delivering some semi-decent code ready? I mean, where does it stop and start?
I think on smaller teams, that will definitely be true. We're seeing everyone starting to move in different directions. We're seeing engineers doing more design work. We're seeing designers doing more engineer work. We're seeing product managers doing user research work. We're seeing, so we're seeing there's just a lot of crossover now and blending of all the different roles, which is a good and a bad thing. I think there is value in having other people and teammates and other people looking at your work and reviewing it and coming up with other people having different ideas. And AI is very hard to replace that. And I don't think AI can do it. I don't think AI is a good replacement for having teammates that see things that you don't. It's better than nothing. Don't get me wrong, but I think that it is not the same as having other people working with you on problems. That is a flaw in this concept. And I certainly know for myself, it was nice to have a PM to go off and do some of the business modeling. I'm going to focus on the flow here and what we're trying to do. You go figure out is this going to make us money? What are the metrics that we're going to need? And hey, data scientist, you go figure this part out. And engineer, you go figure out what the architect, so everyone having to deal with everything is going to be hard. Now, it'll be interesting to see what kind of stuff AI can handle behind the scenes, like it's doing for code right now. And for design too, it is definitely sweeping some stuff under the rug. But I do think that there is so much interesting stuff that's about to happen, both from an interface standpoint. Whenever you have a new technology, whether that's personal computing or mobile or social or AI,
yeah.
It takes a couple years before you figure out what the technology is actually good for. Back when the iPhone came out, we were shoving desktop apps and stuff onto it. It wasn't until a couple years later that we really started to get things that felt mobile native. And I think we are getting very close to starting to see what are those AI native applicate that are built AI first. What are those kinds of things? And that requires a lot of design to think through. New technology requires new patterns and new ways of thinking. And I think that if you can get your foot in the door and get one of these jobs, I think that there's just so much to think through. There's so much to design and so much to research and so much to figure out. I mean, the industry is begging for designers now. They just don't know it.
Yeah, it totally feels like that. Is that there's going to be a realization soon that AI workflow design is really in the shitter. we need designers back.
From your mouth to God's ear, I really hope that there is this kind of reset, like, oh, whoops, we cut too deep. This goes back to this idea, like, we don't need designers. We just have this box. You just type into it and it'll just make everything for you. It doesn't tell you the thing that you should be making. That's what design does. Steve Jobs famously said, it's not how it looks, it's how it works. And trying to figure out how these things should work, that's a design task that I really hope we start focusing a lot more on.
That was an amazing chat. That was a workaround, I guess, around what's going on for everyone really in the industry right now.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. And thank you for all your shared insights on LinkedIn that I'm reading and other places, Medium, etc. Some of your insights around the UI and what's happening right now are truly on point and so relevant daily as to what we're all going through. So yeah, it's excellent.
Thank you. Yeah. And the students are really doing a lot of just amazing things that are very inspiring to me. And I'm like, oh, right. That's a great idea. I mean, they are really steeped in it. So yeah, me being able to like observe their work and work alongside them, be pulling out insights from the stuff that they're doing is just incredible. I mean, I feel so privileged to be around them and around the researchers that I have around me that are absolute geniuses, PhDs, are thinking 2 years out, 3 years out, 20 years out about the implications of all this stuff. Being in that environment is just amazing.
That's great. Thank you again for your time. It was super to catch up and to chat about some of these areas.
Thank you, Mark. This is great.
If you've learned anything from this episode, I ask one small favor. Please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or share this episode across your networks. Both really help the growth of the podcast and will allow me to continue to secure amazing guests that will part their insight with you. Thanks for listening to the official UX Institute podcast and talk to you next time.